r/AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit, when did you realize a kid was gifted? I knew when he surprised me by reassembling an engine out of a car all by himself in a single 90-minute class period. It was right before school let out for COVID. I had to hurry up and get some projects thrown back together quickly since school was closing. He asked to do it, so I let him try and went off to do other things. By the end of the class it was completely assembled. Never asked me for help and it was working. Definitely gifted. You just met Anakin Skywalker. Was this in high school? That's impressive for an undergraduate. I am an organic professor and resonance really screws most of my students for some reason. After less than 1 year of music lessons, it was clear the student would likely become a concert pianist when he learned 15 of Bach's 2-part inventions from memory and played them brilliantly. I'm a preschool teacher and I knew a 3-year-old girl that had very extensive vocabulary and could already read really well. Once during lunchtime, a little boy scarfed down his food and her response was, "Whoa, he must have been famished." I was blown away. She also taught me about the digestive system once during lunchtime, and it was accurate information. But her favorite subject was the solar system. She was full of facts about the solar system, and she would teach me new things all the time. I always told her mom that she wasn't ready for kindergarten. She's ready for college. I was teaching distance over time graphs. The student stated that if the line just went straight up that it would indicate teleportation because distance has been gained but no time has passed. This was 5th grade science. Edit. This kid ended up skipping 6th and 7th grade. 5th to 8th. He was a super humble kid. I miss having him in my class. Took a summer job helping at a daycare. One of the toddlers, about 18 months old, was way ahead of the rest. Could talk full sentences, knew his ABCs, could count beyond 20, already had shapes and colors down. I've seen kindergarten age kids that haven't mastered some of these things. He's in his early 20s now with a master's in engineering and a 6-figure salary. An interesting test for toddlers is to see if they can hold an extended, back and forth conversation with adults. Most kids at this age, and most grown-ass adults, are just asking for something or telling you something. Not a teacher, but a student with a gifted kid in his class. In 3rd grade we had a new student come in who had just moved to the country with his family. Our teacher saw he was smart. She challenged him with some math we were meant to learn in a couple weeks. He solved the problems no problem. Next she tried some 4th grade level math. Again he solved it with no problems. After that she called in one of the 5th grade teacher and she gave him some problems meant for 5th graders. As expected he solved those without any problems. They kept going until he got a question partially right, I believe, but that point they were giving him stuff intended for early mid-year 6th grade students. Last I heard this kid got a degree in mathematics from Carnegie Mellon University. I guess I saw it right from the start. She started walking ridiculously early, like 6 or 7 months. Started talking not long after that. Declared around a year and a bit I don't like diapers. I'm not going to use them anymore and was toilet trained after that. Started talking to dead people not long after that. When she never got a single question wrong on any of my assignments and ended each marking period with an average higher than 100 due to extra credit assignments. I used to put a math joke puzzle in the corner of the whiteboard, essentially 3 golden triangle numbers arranged in a triangle, and a puzzle which gave the letter I as a result in the middle. In short, it was an Illuminati joke. I had this up for quite a few classes, with nobody being able to guess what on earth it was, until the last class of the day. A student who suffered from particularly invasive autism just came in. Took maybe 3 seconds at most, and then laughed saying, "Why have you drawn the Illuminati symbol on the board?" It wasn't so much that it was impossible. I was just blown away by how quickly he managed to do it. Ain't a teacher and it's my little brother, but I thought I'll share it. When I was around 14 and he was around 6 years old, I would watch lots of YouTube videos in English, ain't our native language, and he would just sit on the bed behind me and watch for hours. I thought he was just bored and didn't understand anything from what was being said. FFW, a year we were on a long car ride and he picked up a history book in English. After a couple hours he tells us he is done reading it. Dad laughs and says, "Oh sure." I ask him to read a sentence and translate it. He proceeds to absolutely nail it and shock us. 11-year-old girl, year 7, in my maths class. She started asking questions that would have stumped the brightest in my top set year 11. It was a delight to have her in my class, and I'm so jealous of the teacher who gets to teach her this year. I came into the room. He was playing a few strings on the guitar. I asked what it was and he soft pedaled it. I pushed a bit further and he started playing what he'd written. I was blown away. Of course it needed a bit of fine tuning, a guitar solo in the middle, and a few oh-oh-oh-la-las here and there, but he'd written a legitimate rock song. Blew his parents away when we played it in concert. One child. He was more ahead of his peers in every aspect. It seemed like he was babysitting the rest of his classmates. After a week of teaching the class simple coding, he built a fully functional multiplayer game with material he taught himself. This was at age 8. Another child consistently produced excellent work, finished early and could discuss his viewpoints in depth, and actually made me change my viewpoint. He was brilliant in maths. Once I was explaining a new concept to the class and worked out one example together. I told them that I would guide them in the second example so that I can help whoever needs, and I hear a really genuine and cute oops. I just finished them all now. I teach at university, so most of the people you are dealing with are fairly intelligent otherwise. What generally impresses me is the occasional student who has a high capacity for original thought. Most people are capable of getting a degree. It's not particularly difficult once you've learned the rules. What distinguishes a gifted scholar from anyone else is the capacity to think creativity and originally. It is the ability to look at a problem and think about various pathways of solving it, a willingness to try new things, and a high degree of openness to unknown things. Usually, you can tell a really able student when they preface a question with what if or similar terms, as it generally indicates that they are thinking of alternatives, hypotheticals, and trying to answer it. This is always a good sign and often shows positive engagement. By contrast, you can often tell a weaker student when they regularly ask questions such as what's the bare minimum, will this be on the test, etc. These are not bad questions as such, but it indicates that their priority is to get the mark grade and leave. If that is your priority, fair enough. I hope you do well, but it will restrict your capacity to think creativity and originally. Science teacher here UK. The most gifted kids I've ever taught are those that in year 7, 11-12 years old, never gave up, always pushed on even when wrong and just kept trying. These are the kids that started average but walked away with, once or twice, getting 100% on a GCSE test. Part might be an inbuilt natural ability, but to me a truly gifted kid is the one that takes failure and turns it into a learning chance, as they will always get further in life. For an exchange student from China in the 8th grade, his writing abilities far exceeded the majority of even the accelerated class. I moved him from regular English to accelerated, and not only was his writing strong, his insights were so deep and thoughtful. At the end of the year, I learned not only was he a top student in my class, he won Student of the Year in Spanish as well. I'll preface this by saying I think gifted may be the most abused word in educational circles. It's very often a stand-in for highly competent or just plain old bright. I'm a high school English teacher, and giftedness is really difficult to discern because there is so much academic dishonesty. It's very hard to know what's actually a student's idea. Yes, even with more creative assignments, I can tell, however, whether a student has a high capacity for the subject only if I give unannounced reading assessment in class. Have I seen some very bright, hard-working kids in my ranks? Sure. Have I seen who I believe will be the next Walt Whitman or Flannery O'Connor? No. I do teach one elective, ethic, that relies largely on logic, and it's a lot easier to see there. Some kids just have it. Their minds work very quickly and they can grasp concepts very quickly. It's kind of crazy to see it in action because it doesn't necessarily correlate to high performance in other classes, though it very often does. I'm a special ed teacher and I teach kids who have emotional and behavior disabilities like oppositional defiance disorder or autism, which manifests as anger. That kind of stuff. But anyway, last year I had a kid who we think had a photographic memory and was a possible savant. He could see a map once and be able to draw it nearly perfectly hours or even days and months later. He had almost every detail too, and all the towns and cities spelled correctly and major land features and even the major highways correctly labeled and named. He also was like a human calculator. You could ask him nearly any math equation and he could answer it in a few seconds in his head. Granted, they couldn't be extreme equations, but pretty much anything like PEMDASYs he could do in his head quickly. His trouble was that he was very aggressive and we could never put him back in a gen ed classroom because he was such a danger to other kids and teachers if he became annoyed or upset. But he was a good kid and very intelligent, he just had a lot of trouble with his emotions and behaviors. I teach foreign language at a university, and one semester I get a notification that there will be a minor, under 18, in the class. I have to take some online tests about that, so it's a bit annoying, but fine. Anyway, flash forward to a couple weeks into the semester. I'm talking with one of my students during the break. He's an advanced undergrad in his junior year, taking grad courses in theoretical topology, thinning hair, glasses, also very interested in philosophy, which was my major in college, so we got along on that front. I figured he was a little older than everyone else, and had come to college late or something. Then it comes out, he's 17. He was so brilliant that he gave his high school principal an ultimatum after his first year. Either they give him the degree early and he goes straight to college, or he drops out and goes to college anyway. Ivy Leagues were already looking to recruit him. I'd never encountered a genius before that, and he was just this very humble, unassuming guy. Always did his homework and showed up on time. I'm not a classroom teacher, mostly music, but I had a small group of first and second graders for a math flex block. Basically we group the kids by level instead of grade or class, and I had the extension group. They had all the core concepts, and we were building on them. This one second grade kid was something else. We were working on double digit adding and subtracting with regrouping, borrowing, and somewhere along the line, this kid figured out multiplication. Then he figured out he can use those rules to multiply large numbers that end in zeros. Egg, 700x4. He expanded this rule to include more zeros. Then he figured out he could start putting numbers in the tens and ones slots. And then school was shut down. Not a traditional teacher, but I taught guitar at a mom and pop guitar store in my hometown. A few years ago, a lady brought her 7-year-old daughter in for formal training. Now, 99 out of 100 times, a kid that young wants to play the guitar until they get one. After that, it sits in a corner and collects dust until it makes its way to Goodwill or something. This girl had legitimate talent though. She managed to teach herself very basic chords on her own, and had even began writing music. Everything I taught her, she learned within seconds. I also discovered through comparison with my own ear training, that she had perfect pitch. Musicians are dongs. Many of us rarely recognize or appreciate true talent in someone else. But this girl was truly something special. If she isn't a famous successful musician someday, it will be a travesty. I'm brownie leader for Girl Guiding UK Girl Scouts aged 7-10 basically, and we were doing a simple task with money. They had a series of questions to answer for points. One of which was, if you add up all the coins we use, how much does it make? All the girls looked puzzled, and most began furiously counting on their fingers. However, one of them, after around 3 seconds of thinking, just said the answer without any hesitation. She worked it out faster than I did. I was very impressed. Context: I'm doing a biochemistry degree, so I do maths and stats all the time. Needless to say, she got double points. Edit. The sum would be 1p plus 2p plus 5p plus 10p plus 20p plus 50p plus £1 plus £2 equals pound symbol 3.88. English teacher here. I see it when they write. Classroom dynamics being what they are. Not every kid talks much in class. Some prefer to stay back, and some are held back by some of the bigger personalities in class. But when they write directly to me. You can see it in their ideas and the way they express them. Whether the spelling is perfect or not, you can tell when a kid is bright and insightful when you're one-on-one. I'm not a teacher, but I was for a while a medicine student and met an extremely gifted mate there. He was just 16 instead of 18. We found out later, he came from a Middle Eastern country and didn't speak a single word in our language. In less than a month he learnt enough of the language to maintain a conversation. to follow classes, and to get around 95/100 questions right in our first anatomy test. From that moment on, he just aced every single exam. And today he's working as a surgeon in the most important hospital of his country. We took standardized tests like the second week of school. Hadn't really done much academics yet as it was elementary school, grade 5, and most of what we'd done was routines and introductions games. Kid scored at a 10th grade level in math and 9th grade in reading. Okay, whatever. Impressive but not unheard of. Except this kid was at the worst school in the state. Literally. Ranked dead last. His whole schooling career. Nobody else in my class scored above a 6th grade level in anything and most were 3/4 grade level. I basically had to do entirely separate lesson plans for this kid, while the rest of my class did multiplication facts. I had a coding curriculum and was teaching him basic languages. He had his own reading group in addition to the high reading group. It was even more incredible, because he'd always been in trouble and in the principal's office the years before. I sent him to ISS once, all year, really low for that school. Kids on other classes went literally daily. I had a few go once a week. I begged his mom to switch him out of that school track. Said I'd fill out any paperwork, write any letters. It was my only year as a teacher. Not sure what happened to him. Mom never contacted me. He finished the year by shattering all of his records on testing exams. Literally the 0.01% on his tests. He's legitimately one of the smartest kids I'd ever met. From the poorest school with the worst conditions I've ever seen. Lots of different conversations and questions, but the first time I realized she was talented at maths was when she proposed a formula for a quadratic sequence. I usually teach the lesson through frogs hopping and leaping and ask them to look for patterns, and I'm happy if they can realize the symmetrical nature of the lesson. But she just came out with the damned formula after 20 minutes of trial and error investigation. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.